everybody, welcome back to another episode from Ampro Engineering. We're featuring the Falcon again, and as the Falcon has gotten a lot of use lately, I finally developed a brace for the top and the bottom of the chassis that will help to eliminate the fact that the front of the Falcon and the rear of the Falcon enjoy parting ways. The two parts that we have will brace the top and the bottom of the car. To those of you unfamiliar with the Falcon, one of its problems, and I don't want to dive into the Falcon as a whole because I will do a buyer's guide on this car, but what I want to focus on is why I'm making these upgraded parts. The Falcon has a problem where the bulkhead right here will overstress this area on the chassis and cause it to fracture. The reason for this is the bulkhead is only held in place by these two screws, which I've taken out already. That's why it's kind of flopping around, as well as these two screws here. So there's a lot of stress being applied to a very, very small area on the chassis. The goal here is to help to redistribute that load. On the bottom, it's usually a tensile load where it's being pulled on, but it can also be compressive in the event that you do crash head on into something, whereas the top is usually almost always a compressive load where if you're landing a jump and there's a force on the bottom of the bumper, or if you're crashing into something more solid, that the top of the bulkhead will push backwards. So to mitigate this, we have developed these guys. This is the top piece. Now, if you've seen the video on the Stadium Blitzer, you'll notice that there's a couple of differences. First off, that these have screws that will hold it in place. Secondly, like the Blitzer, the load, these are only here to really hold it where it's supposed to be, but the force is going to be distributed along this face here. So it's important that when you install it, that this face is coming into contact with this face on the bulkhead. So if you have any flashing or sprues stuck on this, make sure that you do clean it all. To install this piece, you will take off these two screws here, which your Falcon should already have. These are shoulder screws. You can see them right here. You will also need to install two screws here if nothing is there, or if you are running a mechanical speed control, you will need to move the speed control, put in this bracket, set it back down, and space up the other side because it will occupy that space where the servo normally is. Just a side note, prior to installation, you do want to take a razor blade and make sure that you clean these inside edges here. A sharp edge is very important because it does need to fit very cleanly and snugly on the boss, and sometimes there can be some leftover material, so just kind of give this a little cleaning because you want a nice sharp edge. At this point here, we can simply align it. The screw bosses are going to be a little bit high, so you're going to push those in while pushing the bulkhead down, and this should snap into place. It's easier if you're not on camera doing this at the same time. And now I'm going to push this down and put in these two shoulder screws. Then this one here. And finally, these two. Please note that these are printed in SLS nylon, and I've selected the yellow option. However, the nylon really doesn't like to get dirty, in that when you tend to get mud or dirt stuck to it, it's not great to come clean. So what I do is I spray paint them, usually in a matte clear coat, and this seals the nylon so that if it does get dirty, it just washes right off. Okay, so those are in. At this point, really give this a firm press. You do want to make sure that it's seated nicely against that inside wall, and then go ahead and replace your screws here. The screws that belong here are 12mm long self-tapping M3s. Unfortunately, the screw boss that you can see them going through is nearly 3mm in length. This means if you replace these with the original 12mm long screws, you are losing 3mm of thread engagement. So it's very important that you replace these with a 14mm variant. All right, so that is in. And again, you do not want to over torque these because this area is very susceptible to stripping on this car. Once it's stripped, you will have to actually replace this entire top and bottom screw with one machine screw with a nut on the top. So it isn't the end of the world, so it's better off that you do take it a little easy on these. The top is done, let's address the bottom now. For the base, I'm gonna unscrew the bulkhead here. You will also want to remove both screws for the servo, and then we'll take our lower brace and install it right here. Unlike the top, this lower brace is less critical to replace the screw with a 14 millimeter variant, as the thickness of this plate is significantly less. However, I am still going to go ahead and put a 14 millimeter unit in. Remember to always back thread because you do not want to strip anything out. I've also placed a couple of washers here just to help to better distribute the load. The servo will have no problem whatsoever in using the same screws. We'll just run it right through the slot, snug that up. I think anybody watching this channel is well aware of my dislike for senseless modification and drilling holes. I don't have a problem with it if the vehicle in question is really beat up or heavily modified, but this one here is neither of those two. The last two screws are going to go here. These screws are the backside of the bosses for the mechanical speed control, and the screw that's necessary is an 8 millimeter long self-tapping M3 screw. So the bottom brace is in, top brace is in. At this point here, the Falcon is finally capable of heading out to the track. I've been dying to bring it over there, but I simply could not bear the thought of jumping this even higher without a more reinforced front end. Those of you that saw my suspension test, believe me, I was cringing every time the car hit the ground too hard. But now I'm confident that the brace is going to very much increase the rigidity. In fact, there's almost no flex now, whereas before you'd actually see the side walls of the chassis bending. Not that I applied that much load because I was always worried about that in general, but this feels incredibly solid. Colors are of course available in kind of the rainbow spectrum. That is all. Please stay tuned for the next trip to the racetrack. This car is going to have a ball. In fact, there's one more upgrade that I'm working on for the rear, so that is coming very soon. Again, thank you all so much for watching. While I've got you here, I'm going to just show you a real quick sneak peek of something to come. Complete Blackfoot interior. We'll talk more later. Please subscribe if you have not already, and comment away. It really helps out my channel, and I love hearing what you have to say. Before you take off, please check out the band Blue Pinto. They do allow me to use their songs in my videos, and a link to their Facebook is in the end credits. And please remember that all of the part numbers and the bill of materials for these parts is in the description, as well as links to where to get them on Shapeways. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.